Today I'm going to be sharing a list of recommendations of some of my favorite mystery books that I've read lately. In general, I've just been enjoying mystery books a lot more than thriller books recently. In 2024 so far, I have read 28 thriller books and my average rating of my thriller books is a 2.9 out of 5, whereas I've read 19 mystery books and my average rating of those 19 books I read is a 4.11 out of 5. So I'm seeing a really clear difference in liking mysteries more than thrillers this year. It might just be because it's a little bit newer to me because I've just read so many thrillers in my life and not as many books that were more focused on the mystery element. So I wanted to share those recommendations with you today. One of the first mysteries I've read earlier in the year was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This is a young adult book that is the start of a series, and so far this is still the only book I've read in the series. I have not continued yet, but let me know if you think I should. I haven't been reading as much young adult this year, but I really enjoyed this one. It went darker than I was expecting it to for it to be a young adult mystery, so even though I read primarily adult, I still had a lot of fun reading this one. I really enjoyed the characters in the story. The main character is a girl named Pip, and she's working on a project for school where she's trying to solve this mystery of something that happened in her hometown a couple years ago. The story there is that a popular girl in town was murdered, allegedly by her boyfriend, and then he killed himself. But Pip does not think that's really what happened, and so she's trying to talk to people in the town and gather evidence and clues to understand what actually happened all those years ago. The story is mostly told in typical prose, but there are some mixed media elements where you'll get interview clips where either she's interviewing someone or transcripts of when the police interviewed suspects. And I would highly recommend doing the audiobook if you are planning to read this one. I followed along both physically and in the audiobook, and the audiobook brings the story to life really well and just brings the interviews to life really well. And if you've always thought this looked interesting but you were unsure if you should read a young adult book, that's how I was feeling. I've read a lot of young adult before, but I just haven't really been in the mood for YA recently. But I'm really glad I picked this one up. I ended up picking it up for a book club and we had a really fun discussion around it. And like I said, I still have only read this one so far, so let me know if you think I should continue in the series. Next is The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. Stuart Turton is one of my favorite authors, so it was no surprise that I ended up enjoying this one as much as I did. This is a dystopian, sci-fi, apocalyptic type of murder mystery that is set on this island at the almost end of the world. In the context of this book, there was this big thing that happened several years ago where this fog descended across the world and killed everyone except for the remaining people alive who live on this island. But then one of their lead scientists on the island ends up being murdered, and because of that it triggers this security issue where the fog is now going to be able to reach the island and they have a little over 100 hours left to live if they can't figure out how to stop the fog from getting past their security breaches. The main mystery here is who murdered their beloved scientist. They have a really great community on this island. They all get along. They never have any issues like this, so it's very abnormal to have a murder in the first place, and they have a very limited time span they have to be able to solve the mystery. If you like something a little different and you're looking for something that leans a little more heavily on sci-fi and apocalyptic type of stories, then I definitely think you would enjoy this one. It was very unique, and if you liked this, I would definitely recommend checking out other books from Stuart Turton because I've really enjoyed everything that he's written. Next is one of my most recent reads, and that is Swiped by L.M. Chilton. This is a super fun mystery story where you're following this main character named Gwen, and this really strange thing happens to her when she realizes that all of the men she's gone on dates with recently, finding them on dating apps, all of those men keep ending up murdered in the exact order in which she has dated them. She doesn't know who's murdering them, why, or if her own life is in danger, and so she's trying to get to the bottom of it before she ends up potentially murdered as well. Not only was the concept of this so fun, but also just the writing style of it was great. There's a lot of humor in this book. The tone of it was just so fun. And I also listened to this one on audiobook, and I really recommend the audiobook. This is I guess a British author. The narrator was British, and I just love a British mystery. You're gonna see that more throughout the rest of the books I have to talk about. I love a British mystery with British humor in it. If you also like that, I definitely recommend checking this one out. Next up is The Return of Ellie Black by Emiko Jean. This is one of those books that is going to be more like mystery thriller, towing the line, but the heart of the story is uncovering the main mystery of what happened to Ellie Black before she returned. So in this story, there was this girl named Ellie Black who went missing several years ago, and now she has returned. You're also following the perspective of the detective on the case who is trying to discover what happened to Ellie Black. Ellie is not helping. She's not communicating. She's not sharing where she has been and what happened to her for the past couple of years, and that's especially frustrating to the detective because she's trying to make sure this doesn't happen to other girls in the area, and she's personally so affected by it because her own sister went missing so many years ago. I found this story to be very engaging. This was the first thing that I read from this author, and I really enjoyed the writing, so I would definitely read from them again in the future. And I ended up pretty surprised by how everything was explained in the end, so definitely enjoyed this one. Next is a book that I read an arc of as an ebook, so I don't own a physical copy of it, but that is How to Solve Your Own Murder. This is the start of a series. It's the only book out so far, and I will definitely be continuing in this series. This is a book that has a super classic cozy murder mystery type of feel to it. It is set in this small village, and you're following your main character, Annie, as she is coming to visit her great aunt Frances. But right after she arrives, she ends up finding her great aunt Frances murdered. And the funny thing is, great aunt Frances always suspected that she would be murdered because when she was a teenager, she had this sidekick tell her this riddle type of prophecy that made her suspect that she would one day be betrayed and murdered. So she's been trying to solve her own murder her whole life before it ever even happened. And now Annie is stepping in, collecting all of that evidence and trying to solve what actually happened to her great aunt. This one has a great cast of characters, a lot of funny moments, and I also appreciated in this one that there was not an overwrought romance element to the story. It felt like the type of book where that could have happened, but the author didn't do that. And I don't always want to read that in my mysteries. It's nice to sometimes have ones where that's not taking up a big portion of the plot. So I really enjoyed this one, and I can't wait to see where it goes next in the series. All of the remaining books I have to talk about are in pairs because I've read multiple books from these authors, and they're kind of coming up as new favorite authors for me. First is Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson, and Everyone on This Train is a Suspect. These books are part of the same series. This is the first one, this one is the second one, and I did enjoy both of these. I liked the first book better than the second book, but I hear a lot of people actually saying the opposite, and a lot of people are actually liking the second book better. I still enjoyed both of them, but I did read the first book twice, and both times I ended up giving it a 4-star, and this one I ended up giving a 3.5 star. So not a big difference, but I did like the first one just a little bit better. In these stories, we're following a main character who is a writer, and everyone in his family has killed someone. The first book is set on this chalet vacation out in the snow. These murders start to occur. Everyone in the family has killed someone. Who could potentially be responsible in the family? The second book follows the main character after the events of the first book. This one is set on a train with a bunch of other mystery authors, and they all have to come together to try to solve what has happened when someone ends up murdered. These books are so fun. There's a lot of breaking of the fourth wall with the reader, where the main character will stop to catch you up on everything. They'll give you clues and say, in chapter 5, 16, and 32, there's going to be a murder. In chapter 54, there's going to be a huge plot hole to look out for. So it really engages the reader in the solving of the mystery, which I really enjoy. It has this like classic feel to it because of that. There's a lot of humor. There's a lot of meta self-referentialness, especially between the two books. And I think this is going to be a really fun series to continue to follow along with. Next up is Angie Kim. I have Happiness Falls and Miracle Creek, both from Angie Kim. I absolutely am obsessed with both of these books. They were both 5 stars for me. I think she is such a talented writer, and these are more literary mysteries. So if you're looking for something that feels more like literary fiction with a mystery element, this is what I would point you to. Most of what I have discussed in the video otherwise are more cozy, silly, funny kind of mysteries. These cover some more serious topics. They have a little bit more of a literary fiction feel to them, but they are both so fantastic. There are a lot of similarities between these two books. They cover a lot of similar ideas and themes, but I think they were both just executed so well that I wouldn't recommend one over the other. I think they're both great. In both of these stories, you're following a family of Korean immigrants. In Happiness Falls, father goes missing, and the last person that he was seen with is their son, who has a form of autism where he is also nonverbal, and so he cannot communicate what happened to the father, and the family is trying to find find the missing dad, and also going through some of his things to try to see if that leads to anything, which then leads to them coming to understand their father a little bit differently as they start to dig into what he has been up to the past couple of months. And then with Miracle Creek, again, this is a family of Korean immigrants, and this couple runs this oxygen facility that is used for treatment for different conditions, including autism, infertility, among others. But most of the clients who come to the center to receive the treatment are parents of children with autism. And then one day, a horrible accident happens where the facility explodes. A couple people end up murdered, and most of the story follows what's going on a year after the explosion, as there is a case going on in court trying to prosecute who they think did it, and then you as the reader are trying to also uncover who actually is responsible for the explosion and why. I think these are the only novels that Angie Kim has out so far, but I will be keeping a sharp eye out for more because I loved both of these books so much. I have also been reading the Thursday Murder Club series by Richard Osman. So far I have read the first and the second, which is the Thursday Murder Club and The Man Who Died Twice. This one I gave a 3.5 stars. This one I gave a 4 stars. So I am enjoying it a little bit more as I continue in the series. And in this series, if you somehow haven't heard of it, it is incredibly popular. I'm just a little bit late to the game. But in this series, you're following a group of some older adults who are living together at this community center. They like to get together and try to solve cold cases. But then the cases get closer to home as some murders start to occur in their own community, and they work together to try to solve what is going on. There's a different mystery between each book, so you do get a resolution in the first book before you move on to the second book. But the best thing about these books to me is the characters and just the humor in this series. This is another series with a lot of British humor. I don't know if I was born in the wrong country or what, but I find British humor so hilarious. I just love the feel of it. They're so funny, they're so cozy to read. I really enjoy these characters, and these are also books that I like to listen to on audiobook. That is a big recommendation that I had given to me when I first tried to read the first book and wasn't getting into it as much. Everyone was like, go to the audiobook. Those will really bring the story to life for you. And that was a great experience. So I highly recommend that. I think the audiobooks for these are fantastic, and I can't wait to read the next 2 books in the series. And then finally, I have Janice Hallett's The Appeal and The Mysterious Case of the Alperton Angels. I read this book first. This is her most recent book that is out right now, but she's getting ready to have another one published, The Examiner. So it won't be her most recent for very long, but this is the book that I started with. And Janice Hallett tells her stories entirely in mixed media. So these stories are entirely told through reading emails and text messages and interview transcripts. It is as if you are finding all of the evidence of something that has happened and you're reading the evidence to try to solve the case. In The Mysterious Case of the Alperton Angels, this one is a bit of a darker toned story that is following some journalists who are trying to find some missing people. Many years ago, there was this big tragedy where this cult had gotten together and they did some kind of ritual and they all ended up dying. But there was a baby involved in the cult, not by choice. Someone just had a baby who was in the cult. And the baby was never found at the scene of the crime, so people think the baby got away and has now grown up. It's now 18 years later, the baby will now be an adult, and there's a journalist who's trying to write a new angle to the story and find this baby, and as they're doing that, they're uncovering even more about the mystery of what occurred all those years ago. The Appeal is a story that is following a group of people who are in a community theater together, and the main people who lead the community theater group end up having a family tragedy occur when their granddaughter, who is 2 or 3 years old, ends up diagnosed with cancer. And so that kind of slows down the production of the play that they're doing that season because they're trying to make sure they're taking care of her. Her name is Poppy. And then they end up starting an appeal to raise a lot of money for Poppy to get this rare treatment that is only available in America. And they're going to have a lot of money to be able to buy the medicine to give her this treatment. And then someone ends ends up murdered, conspiracies abound, and you get to solve the mystery. I love how much of an active role you get to take in reading these books because of the way they're presented, as if just showing you all the evidence, and then the whole time you're like trying to piece the strings together in your mind to solve what has gone on. You have to be immensely talented to be able to write a compelling mystery in this format. I don't know how Janice Hallett does it, but I admire her so much for it, and I can't wait to read even more from her. So that is it for all of my recommendations of mystery books I've really loved lately. Let me know down in the comments below if you've read any of them and what you think. And also let me know if you have any additional recommendations for me, especially if any of these books reminded you of other mystery books you've read. A lot of these are just really showing what I'm really into right now, which is compelling mysteries with a lot of suspects, some humor, some charming characters. If any of that is reminding you of a book that you've enjoyed, definitely let me know down below. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.